Shalom Aleichem. Welcome. We're going to start this week. This week is between Gimel Tammuz and Yud Beis Gimel Tammuz. We're going to start a program, Who's Who in Chabad. I've written 4 books, actually 5, actually 6. 6 works. The first 2 were called Who's Who in Lubavitch. They were published years ago, 5 to 10 years ago. And most recently I wrote 4 volumes so far of Who's Who in Chabad Men, and I've written Who's Who in Chabad Women also about 10 years ago, and just recently, a few months ago, Who's Who in Chabad Women. So I'll talk a little bit about each program, a person or two, and hopefully this will be listened to, and if family members have comments, you'll send them in to me, and we'll do what we can for future programs. So the individual I want to talk about today is the Chasid, Reb Mendel Drizin. Reb Mendel Drizin passed away, I believe, in 2020 or 2021, was one of the sons of the venerable Chasid, Reb Avram Mayor, Reb Avram Drizin, who was born in 1900 and learned in Lubavitch in 1913, 1914, and there's much written about him, and one day we will also share his life story briefly. Reb Mendel was a good friend of my father's. They learned together in Lud, in the yeshiva by Reb Shlomo Chaim. And Reb Mendel, my father told me, was a bacher. He was a student who was an Oved. He actually davened barichas. He spent time in meditative Chabad thought. And he was an individual who had a good head. He understood well the text and was able to focus and meditate, not just on Chassidus, but also on Nigla, on Talmud. My own experiences with Reb Mendel in the last 10, 15 years, meeting him once in a while at Crown Heights, is his emphasis on Chitas and understanding the Chitas, and particularly understanding the Chumash and Rashi. And when he would see me, he would say, come, he would say, you learned Chitas today? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I'd like to ask you something. And he would ask me something, and he stumped me. I didn't know the answer. And then he went on to explain. And it was interesting to see someone who is already, in their 70s, make an ikar, a primary mode of his understanding, and the study of Chitas and the Chumash and Rashi in particular. Also, he was someone who daily gave Tzedaka to Chsanim, to grooms, who were, needed funds for their marriage, many of them from Eretz Yisrael, Bacharim, who learned the 770, and others who came to him for support. In addition to that, he did clandestinely, quietly, supported various institutions. The Rebbe told Reb Mendel to move to Crown Heights, buy property there and invest in supporting the community. I also recall when Rabbi Moshe Bogomilsky would announce from the Rebbe's Bima, Simchas Torah, one night the money went to Merkez Linyon Chinuch, and one night, Shminat Seres Simchas Torah, one night it went to the Yeshiva Toim Chit Mimim under the Rashag, under the Rebbe, but the Rashag ran it. And the other night the money was for Merkez Linyon Chinuch, Merkez. So Rabbi Bogomilsky was the one who announced the people who bought the different kibudim, the honors. And I recall vividly, I stood near that bima. That was one of my place for hakafas. I stood up close, and I recall hearing him saying, Reb Mendel Drizin, $10,000 for Toim Chit Mimim. Naturally, his father, Reb Avram, had a relationship with the Rashag. He worked for the Rashag in the earlier years as as a fundraiser, as someone who, not a fundraiser, someone who went around. He was, as the Mittler Rebbe said to the people, he planted spirituality, he taught Chassidus, he chazed Chassidus, he fabrained where he came to Chicago and Houston and other places, which he also told us later about his trips there. That is Rabbi Avraham Mayor, and he was Kaitzer Gashmias, and he reaped the material, i.e. people gave him donations for the yeshiva. So Mendel was a Yid who lived and breathed Crown Heights since the, I believe, late 50s when he arrived, till his passing. And I want to say at the same time that his wife Chani happens to be a relative of ours, the Dolphins. May she be well and only have arichas yomim v'shem tevis, and have Yiddish Chassidish nachas from her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and of course see Mendel back with everyone through Mashiach's coming. But on a final note, Mendel was to me, he emulated his father, Rabbi Avraham, in the sense that he was a kluger chassid. You know, he wasn't a fool, he was sharp-witted, nonsense really didn't have place in his in his world, although without, putting people down and things like that. But he was Chabad. Chabad is sharfkeit, sharpness, but not kotzker sharfness. Kotzker sharfkeit is can be very degrading and too heavy, too much. And Mendel was balanced that way because Chabad is balanced. On one hand, being a fool is the worst crime and sin in the Chabad lexicon, in the Chabad world. At the same time, the idea of being, smart, like street smart and behavior smart, and that type of mode he emulated. So, b'schusay, may Hashem help that we continue the programs and we talk about other Lubavitch Chassidim of the past 100 years or so, and maybe even before that, who are worthy of knowing about in our world that we live in today. Have a great Shabbos, everyone, and this is the program Who's Who in Chabad.